our next presenter is the wonderful Mitch Meyers. If you look her up on LinkedIn, it says the queen of everything. So after reading her bio, I realized how true that was. Mitch Meyers is the Chief Marketing Officer of CBS NYC, and if you look at your program, you might wonder how that pertains to us and you know really what that means. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Mitch. After 4 years performing accounting and audit work for CPA firms and Emerson Electric Company, Mitch Meyers began her marketing career in the beverage industry. Starting with the 7-Up Company, she was quickly recruited to Anheuser-Busch to introduce a light beer. After 4 unsuccessful attempts by others at the brewery, Mitch and team crafted the sales and marketing story to launch Bud Light into the largest selling light beer in the world. That was the Spuds MacKenzie campaign. Okay, so anybody remembers that? Anheuser-Busch recognized her creative and leadership skills and put her in charge of developing alternative beverages for the world's largest brewer. During this period, she rose to be the highest-ranking woman in Anheuser-Busch corporate marketing and was named Ad Woman of the Year by Adweek magazine. She moved to start her own business and became the founding partner of the famed Zippatoni, I may have said that wrong, Zippatoni Marketing Company. She led the firm to Agency of the Year in 1996, 350 employees, with offices in 5 states, servicing clients such as Motorola, Visa, Bacardi Brands, Energizer Battery, Ralston Purina, and Miller Brewing Company. She and partners sold the agency to Interpublic Group in 2003 and retired. Can you say girl power? Right, right. Always being a lifelong learner and serial entrepreneur, she became interested in the medical cannabis movement and led a team of investors for a license to dispense in the Chicago area in 2014. After successfully getting licensed, she opened the dispensary. She applied for a vertically integrated license in Missouri to grow, extract, and dispense CBD oils for epilepsy. She continues to consult with companies around the country on cannabis business. As the industry matures, her product development and branding skills will allow her businesses to outspace the rest of the industry as it develops like other packaged goods products. Mitch's marketing expertise, coupled with her passion for the plant, the patients, and the products, makes her one of the leading faces of the cannabis industry. Please welcome Mitch Meyers of Nature's Care Medical Cannabis Dispensary. It is crazy stuff.
You didn't tell me we could wear house shoes.
Yeah, she just gave me away. I ditched the heels and I'm wearing slippers.
That's what I want to do. You're smarter than I am. Thank you, Gracie. Boy, that makes me feel really old. I have been around for so long, older than dirt, my kids tell me. But I have to tell you, I really did want to retire. I thought that I would be good at that, and I was for a few years, but I could not turn my head to what's happening in this country with healthcare and with something that's just starting to get uncovered, and that is cannabis, and how those two are colliding. There was a whole team of people that worked very hard to help us get open, and we have a wonderful group here. If you stop by our table and talk to Kim and Jake and Cheryl and Stephanie, they're as passionate as I am about people like you, and hopefully if we can help you. Now, it hasn't always been rosy for cannabis, but Dr. Fisher said this morning that most medicines are rooted in plants, right? Long before modern pharma, our plants gave us the medicine that we needed. Unfortunately, cannabis was thrown under the bus back in the 30s because our government was looking for something to demonize when alcohol was coming out of prohibition. So the history of that, being a marketing buff, is fascinating to me. And I love reading about it and seeing the propaganda films that they created. They really did a job. Okay, what am I doing here? So I think, as he also told you, cannabis has been used on this planet for thousands of years. The Egyptians used it. It was documented in India between the year 2000 and 1400 BC. They had documented uses for nausea, vomiting, epilepsy, inflammation, pain, and fever. And in the Western world, in the early 1800s, we were actually using it. Physicians were prescribing it. You could buy it in the pharmacies, and it was listed in our pharmacopoeia. And I have met physicians that are still alive that say, I remember my father, who was a doc, would write recommendations, and they were very aggravated when this was taken away from them. But in 1937, when this department decided they were going to demonize it, they put a very hefty tax on it and made it very difficult for people to be able to afford, and they were trying to run it out. And the final door was shut in 1970 under President Nixon when they listed it as a Schedule I drug, which Schedule I means there are no medical uses for it and it's highly addictive. Other things like heroin, LSD, ecstasy are on that list. But physicians and researchers, especially the naturopathic docs and people not in the Western world but more Eastern medicine, they continued to use it, and they used other herbs and great products that many of our naturopath docs know about. But it was difficult to get their hands on the plant material. They would sneak it. There's a physician, Dr. Raphael Mishalom from Israel, who literally kept it alive and kept researching and discovered and cataloged THC as being the main compound in 1964. And interestingly, it was 20 years later that researchers found out that our body has an endocannabinoid system. We are built to make cannabinoids and use cannabinoids. And when your body doesn't have what it needs, it can be supplemented with phytocannabinoids coming from the plant material. So he showed you this chart this morning. There are Cb1 and Cb2 receptors. Some of them, THC fits like a lock and key into those receptors, and others are in the periphery of our body. But when cannabis is introduced to your body, there's a system that recognizes it. So some of them, one of the things we get asked a lot is, how can cannabis treat so many conditions? It sounds like hooey because, it can't be good for cancer and epilepsy and chronic pain. Well, the truth is, it's modulating this endocannabinoid system. So it's basically giving your body more of what it needs, or it takes away less of what it needs. So they call that agonist and antagonist. And if it's not properly functioning, it needs to be supplemented. So people will take a form or a strain, and it's not exactly like, take this many milligrams of oxy and here's how you're going to feel, because your body may need more or less of something that's in a particular strain. And there's a little bit of a trial and error and trying to figure out which one's going to work best for you. I saw this quote, your body is an ongoing symphony and the endocannabinoid system is the conductor. So here's a little wheel that shows just a few of the compounds in cannabis. THC is the one most people know of, which is the one that can create the psychoactive feeling. CBD is another compound that is not psychoactive. And CBD is the one that has gotten a lot of visibility recently for epilepsy, pain, even cancer treatment. And you're starting to see a lot of development with CBD products. But as you can see, antibacterial, inhibits cancer growth, neuroprotective, promotes bone growth, reduces, the big thing is inflammation. And I think a lot of people know that's the source of many of our problems. If we can keep that inflammation tapped down, I hope to see someday that we're all on a CBD regimen every day just to minimize inflammation. Interestingly, the same government that said there's no medical benefit has a patent on cannabinoids. 1999, for medical purposes, it says cannabinoids have been shown to be useful in a wide variety of oxidation-associated diseases. That's inflammation, such as ischemic, age-related, inflammatory, and autoimmune diseases. They have particular application as neuroprotectants. So what's the current status? So all cannabis which contains THC and CBD is still listed as a Schedule I federally illegal drug. No medical value, high potential for abuse. There's the other Schedule I drugs, but Schedule II drugs, cocaine, methamphetamine, oxy, fentanyl, all approved, brought to you by the DEA, the FDA, and all the side effects you can stomach with those things. The interesting thing, I was just telling somebody now, in our dispensary facility and also my cultivation in Missouri, I have to sign an affidavit every year that says I understand that I am breaking federal law and at any time I could be arrested and thrown in jail. Don't tell my mother. But you know, popular opinion's changing. The internet's the big leveler, right? People can't hide information from us anymore. You can talk to each other. You know, you are always communicating on these support groups, which is so outstanding. And in 1996, in the state of California, they approved a ballot initiative. It was not legislative. The people got enough signatures to get it on the ballot and change the state constitution. And they approved medical cannabis back then. Since that time, many states have been, you know, turning over and starting with medical. There are now 29 states that have a medical cannabis bill of some sort. And the recent Quinnipiac poll revealed 93% of all people surveyed would like to see medical marijuana. And I used to see this as a political issue. And I spend a lot of time lobbying, both in Springfield and down in Missouri, and it's not political anymore. Everybody knows somebody that has a condition that could be treated, and that is really the game changer. The other thing that happened was major media did a focused piece on CNN. I think most people recognize Dr. Sanjay Gupta, well-known neurosurgeon. He reversed his opinion on cannabis. And he basically said, I was wrong about it not being medicine. It does not have a high potential for abuse. There are legitimate medical applications, and we have been systematically misled by our government on this issue. And so for CNN to do a 1-hour special on somebody as high profile as he is, as a physician, following these people who had been using it, was a real eye-opener. So then everybody who saw this little girl, Charlotte Figge, who lived in Colorado, has Dravet Syndrome, a very serious epilepsy condition. Nothing was working for her, grand mal seizures, and literally her mother worked with some cultivators in Colorado because it was legally approved for medical in 2009. And it just, you know, almost miraculous how quickly it started to help this little girl. So in the state of Missouri, our license is very narrow. We only treat epilepsy patients, and right now I have about 75 patients, of which 80% have seizure reduction. Some of them, about 12%, are completely seizure-free after a year. Some of them are like a 60 to 80% reduction. All of them have quality of life improvement, and many of them have weaned off of 5, 6, and 7 prescription drugs, which once you do that and you start to pull people off these meds, you see who they really are. You know, some of these little kids, their parents really didn't know them. And when you start to peel back those pharma drugs because they are feeling better and the seizure activity slows down, we know that diet is huge. And I can't get somebody who feels really sick to sit and talk to me about eating organically and getting rid of MSG and things that I know that is going to light their brain up. But if I can get them feeling better If I can stop those seizures and they start being more active, then all of a sudden we can start talking about diet. And anybody in this room will tell you that's another 30% progress you can make with good diet. Is it safe? Well, the FDA requires for a drug to be approved that it has to be proven as safe. And I have read a lot of clinical trials recently trying to understand how they do them, and we lose some people in clinical trials. And it was sort of surprising to me to read that. In 18,000 years that we've been documenting cannabis, nobody has died of an overdose. You also have to prove that it's not merely a placebo. And when a little child's having 50 seizures a day, and we can literally stop that or bring it down to 1 or 2, you can't really say that's placebo effect. You can see that physical change. And you also have to prove that it's better than other things on the market for the intended purpose that it's being used. Well, cannabis is safe. It has a very high level of a very high safety profile, which, you know, the naysayers don't want you to know that. But in 2015, the last year I could find information, 48,000 overdose deaths from opiates. And I think we all know that that's in the headlines now. We have an epidemic in this country. 125,000 deaths from alcohol, cirrhosis of the liver type deaths. 480,000 deaths from tobacco. And these are all approved things on the market. In states where cannabis is now available for medical purposes, they have tracked deaths declining 25%, and Medicare reimbursements going down, obviously. People desperately want these options to pharmaceutical drugs. They have untenable side effects, and natural plant medicine is one of them. And cannabis is not the only natural plant. There's a lot of other things out there that your docs can tell you about. Currently, with those 29 states, 80% of the population are living somewhere where they can access it. Now, we've met some people here today from Wisconsin that aren't really happy because they don't have a bill yet, but I can tell you, let your legislators know that you want this, because it's happening everywhere. I had an email this morning from a congressman who wants to meet with me in Missouri because they want to run on this platform next year. And I suspect you're going to see a bit of this in the state of Illinois too, because they've made it so restrictive. There are other conditions that we want approved, and the state has not been coming along, and I think you're going to see it. So make your opinion known. It's very easy to send emails to your legislators. But we are at the tipping point. I mean, Illinois passed this bill in 2014. At the time, it was the most restrictive bill in the country. And I will tell you, I'm very proud of what this state has done, because it is run incredibly well. It's very safe. We know most of the cultivators and a lot of the dispensaries, and everybody's a good actor. And that's important, because in places where they didn't get off on the right foot, it can be a little rocky. And that's, you know, you just don't want to get started with something like that. So while it's a slow go here and we don't have there's more patients that want access, the program has a great foundation. So you can see these 41 conditions currently, and we fought very hard to get PTSD and another chronic pain issue in there. If you're interested and you have one of the approved conditions, you can go to our website. Our table has brochures. Kim can give you all the information you need to learn about the program. You can do that at home online. You can come into our facility and we can explain it all to you. We can help you fill out the forms, and you'll need to make an appointment with your doctor. Tell them that you're interested in utilizing cannabis. We have found that some physicians that are associated with some of the hospital groups are not being permitted to participate. So, you know, you can then call our office. There's other resources to find physicians that are supportive of the program, and you'll have to make an appointment with them. Once you get your forms filled out and you have a physician to fill out their form, you have to have a photograph of yourself that will go on your ID, and you have to go get your fingerprints done to do a background check. They do not permit anybody with a felony charge to be able to have a card. But you send all that in to the Health and Human Services Department, and God willing, 30 to 45 days later, you get a card. And we have heard from them that it does take longer if people don't fill out all the forms correctly. So I would encourage you to come to our dispensary or a dispensary near you and just make sure that you've got all your paperwork correct so that you can get through in the least amount of time. Once you have your card, you're going to have to designate which dispensary you want to go to. And you can find, I think the state actually gives you a map that shows you geographically, what might be closest to you. You may want to look at a couple just to understand, if they have a consultative nature or, just how they operate, and you're permitted with your card to go into any of them, and ask to look around. If you do want to change your dispensary, like if you start with one and you decide you want to go to another one, you can do that, and it takes about 24 hours. You just contact that dispensary, they contact the state, and then the state knows where you're purchasing medicine. And all of that is done because they control the amount of product that people can get. You can buy up to 2.5 ounces every 2 weeks. So what is that experience like? I think some of you in here are my age, and you probably think about, back in the day when you might get it in the park from some sketchy guy. It's not like that. You walk in, and it's a very professional environment. It's more like a doctor's office. This is Kim in our lobby. You will hand over your medical cannabis card and your ID. They check you in. They will know how much product you can order, because your orders will have been tracked in terms of ounces of product. Your first appointment in our operation is an intake session. So many people don't know, haven't done it either at all or in a long time, and we have many forms of the medicine and many different, levels of strength. So, people feel like it's like buying wine. It's like, I don't know what to order. What do I do? So we will have a consultative session with you. We will understand what you're trying to treat, understand what product form you may be interested in. A lot of people say, I don't want to smoke. You don't have to. There's any number of products, and I'll show you some. You were then scanned into the main area, and this happens to be just our area where you actually purchase the product. And we have a large room where we're going to start hosting classes, informational classes, and invite people in to speak. But you can sit out here with other patients if you'd like to speak with them. You can sit out here with one of our patient care specialists and go through what we have available. And then when you're ready to check out, you just go to the checkout counter, you pay. You can either use, we have an ATM in the building, and you can get cash there, or you can bring cash in, or we have a electronic pay system called Hyper. So you can use any of those methods of payment. And this is when you check out. You will be given your product, you see what you have and your invoice, and then you go out that back door. It's a very relaxing experience. When we had our open house, we were able to invite the surrounding community because they were a little nervous about cannabis dispensary. And we had a lot of people that lived around there that came in. And, they said, this is not what we expected. This is such a relaxing environment and a calming experience. I think it just made them feel good to be in there. And it made the neighborhood feel good. So what are the product options? Gracie doesn't like me to show the smokable forms, but it is one. And we still do have people that, have smoked and are very comfortable with that aspect. So we have a broad range of flower. Kim says, I think we carry 15 of the 18 cultivators products, so we have a very wide, large amount of product. The little thing in the middle is a vape oil cartridge. So people now who want to utilize the smoking but don't want to smoke flower, they're vaping using these vape pens, which are like e-cigarettes and that kind of thing. So they're discreet. They don't have the odor like smoking flower does, but you're able to titrate quickly and often. So people who have migraines or pain that they can feel coming on like to have that as an option. There's edibles. If you stop by our table, we have some beautiful chocolates and caramels and gummy products. You know, these sort of change all the time, and you see seasonal new items from the cultivators, but everything is tested and marked so you know exactly what percentage of cannabinoids that you have. These little cookies at the bottom are CBD only. So, you know, even kids with epilepsy, that's something that they could have as a snack. We have topicals. Nope. We have oils, tinctures, and suppositories. I was speaking to someone this morning whose family member has a lower GI cancer. And these suppositories are really excellent for that. And even sometimes some of the kids who are on feeding tubes and things, that's a good way to ingest the product. Tinctures are literally the essential oil that has been mixed with some sort of carrier oil, so coconut oil or hemp oil that you just put drops under your tongue. And then the far right is what is called Rick Simpson oil. And any of you that are on the internet may have read about this guy. He cured his own cancer with a very concentrated oil. And basically, he's not adding anything to it. He is extracting the oil from the plant, and it's a pretty thick, concentrated, you know, heavy strength. And cancer patients are usually accessing this the most. And then topicals, patches. We have these gel pens that I've heard a lot of good things about today, where you just, you know, people who have anxiety use that gel pen to just put a little bit on their skin or on their wrist. We've also got capsules, mints. It seems like every week they're coming out with new products, which is interesting. Are there side effects? It depends on how high that THC is. So that is the psychoactive component, and many people try to avoid that, and there are ways to avoid it. Mixing it with CBD, so if you need to take a high THC to treat a particular ailment, mixing that with CBD does modulate it. It brings down that effect of being high. Dry mouth, sometimes you can get lightheaded or fatigued. Probably not anything you don't get with a lot of other really strong prescription drugs, but you have to be cognizant, you know, when you take it and if you're going to be driving and things like that. There are no withdrawal symptoms, so people can stop this at any time. And drug interactions are rare, but sometimes I know that when I'm dealing with my epilepsy patients, there are 3 of their drugs that go through the same CY450, the liver enzyme. They're being processed at the same place. So we just dose away. We do the oil 2 hours away from any of the prescription drugs that they're taking, because it could elevate one of the prescription drugs. And sometimes they're able to reduce the amount of prescription drugs. That's what we're seeing with opiates. There's a couple of researchers at Washington University that we have met with, and they are looking at mixing cannabis and opioids to try to bring opioids down to a level that is non-addictive, but still get the benefit of it. So hopefully that will all happen in our lifetime. And there is no toxicity. It does not kill people. The benefits are, we see a lot in the neurological area, reduces inflammation, blood pressure regulation. In a lot of our kids, we see their behavior improving, heightened sense of sight, taste, and smell. I'll have these parents tell me that whoever takes care of the kids, like their therapist, will notice first. They'll say, oh my gosh, they're so bright, you know, like they're making so much eye contact. And, you know, we had a little boy that the hospital had really written off, And this little guy has doubled his weight. He's off all his prescription meds. He's starting to talk. He wasn't eating, and now he's eating by mouth. So, you know, we're as excited as the families are to see this sort of progress. Here's the crew at Nature's Care. You can make an appointment. You can just call for information. And as I said, we have a public area that you can come in even if you don't have a card, and just talk to the staff there and ask your questions. And we can even help you with your application if you're that far along. Thank you.